what is written in prophecy? Rand entered the chamber slowly, walking among the great polished redstone columns he remembered from his dreams. Silence filled the shadows, yet something called to him, and something flashed ahead, a momentary light throwing back shadow, a beacon. He stepped out beneath a great dome and saw what he sought. Callandor, hanging hilt down in midair, waiting for no hand but that of the dragon reborn. As it revolved, it broke what little light there was into splinters, and now and then it flared as if with a light of its own. Calling him, waiting for him. If I am the dragon reborn, if I am not just some half madman cursed with the ability to channel, a puppet dancing for Moiraine and the White Tower, take it, lose therein. Take it, Kinslayer. He spun to face the voice. The tall man with close-cropped white hair who stepped from the shadows among the columns was familiar to him. Rand had no idea who he was. This fellow in a red silk coat with black stripes down its puffy sleeves and black breeches, tucked into elaborately silver-worked boots. He did not know the man, but he had seen him in his dreams. "You put them in a cage," he said. "Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine. In my dreams, you kept putting them in a cage and hurting them." The man made a dismissive gesture of his hand. "They are less than nothing. Perhaps one day, when they have been trained, but not now. I confess surprise that you cared enough to make them useful, but you were ever a fool, ever ready to follow your heart before power. You came too soon, Luz Therin. Now you must do what you are not yet ready for, or else die. Die, knowing you have left these women you care for in my hands." He seemed to be waiting for something, expectant. "I mean to use them more, Kinslayer. They will serve me, serve my power, and that will hurt them far more than anything they have suffered before." Behind Rand, Callandor flashed, throwing one pulse of warmth against his back. "Who are you? You do not remember me, do you?" The white-haired man laughed suddenly. "I do not remember you either, looking this way." A country lad with a flute case on his back. Did Ishamael speak the truth? He was ever one to lie when it gained him an inch or a second. "Do you remember nothing, Luz Therin?" "A name," Rand demanded. "What is your name? Call me Belal." The Forsaken scowled when Rand did not react to the name. "Take it," Belal snapped, throwing a hand toward the sword behind Rand. "Once we rode to war side by side, and for that I give you a chance. A bare chance, but a chance to save yourself, a chance to save those 3. I mean to make my pets. Take the sword, countryman. Perhaps it will be enough to help you survive me." Rand laughed. "Do you believe you can frighten me so easily, Forsaken? Ba'alzamon himself has hunted me. Do you think I will cower now for you? Grovel before a Forsaken when I have denied the Dark One to his face? Is that what you think?" Belal said softly. "Truly, you know nothing." Suddenly, there was a sword in his hands, a sword with a blade carved from black fire. "Take it. Callandor, 3,000 years while I lay imprisoned, it has waited there. For you, one of the most powerful Sa'angreal we ever made. Take it, and defend yourself if you can." He moved toward Rand as if to drive him back toward Callandor, but Rand raised his own hands. Sedin filled him, sweet rushing flow of the power, stomach-wrenching vileness of the taint, and he held a sword wrought from red flame, a sword with a heron mark on its fiery blade. He stepped into the forms Lan had taught him till he flowed from one to the next as if in a dance, parting the silk. Water flows downhill. Wind and rain. Blade of black fire met blade of red in showers of sparks, roars like white-hot metal shattering. Rand came back smoothly into a guard stance, trying not to let his sudden uncertainty show. A heron stood on the black blade too, a bird so dark as to be nearly invisible. Once, he had faced a man with a heron-marked blade of steel and barely survived. He knew that he himself had no real right to the Blademaster's mark. It had been on the sword his father had given him, and when he thought of a sword in his hands, he thought of that sword. Once he had embraced death, as the warder had taught, but this time he knew his death would be final. Belial was better than he with the sword. Stronger, faster, a true blade master. The Forsaken laughed, amused, swinging his blade in quick flourishes to either side of him. The black fire roared as if swift passage through the air quickened it. "You were a greater swordsman once, Luz Therin," he said mockingly. "Do you remember when we took that tame sport called swords and learned to kill with it, as the old volume said men once had? Do you remember even one of those desperate battles, even one of our dire defeats? Of course not. You remember nothing, do you? This time, you have not learned enough. This time, Luz Therin, I will kill you." Belial's mockery deepened. "Perhaps if you take Callandor, you might extend your life a little longer. A little longer." He came forward slowly, almost as if to give Rand time to do just that, turn and race to Callandor, to the sword that cannot be touched, to take it. But the doubts were still strong in Rand. Callandor could only be touched by the Dragon Reborn. He had allowed them to proclaim him so for 100 reasons that seemed to leave him no choice at the time. But was he truly the Dragon Reborn? If he raced to touch Callandor in truth, not in a dream, would his hand meet an invisible wall while Belial cut him down from behind? He met the Forsaken with the sword he knew, the blade of fire wrought with Sedin, and was driven back. The falling leaf met watered silk. "Way!" The cat dances on the wall met the boar, rushes downhill. The river undercuts the bank, nearly lost him his head, and he had to throw himself inelegantly to one side with black flame brushing his hair, rolling to his feet to confront the stone falls from the mountain. Methodically, deliberately, Belial drove him back in a spiral that slowly tightened on Callandor. Shouts echoed among the columns, screams, the clash of steel, but Rand barely heard. He and Belial were no longer alone in the heart of the stone. Men in breastplates and rimmed helmets fought with swords against shadowy, veiled shapes that darted among the columns with short spears stabbing. Some of the soldiers formed a rank. Arrows flashing out of the dimness took them in the throat, the face, and they died in their line. Rand hardly noticed the fighting, even when men fell dead within paces of him. His own fight was too desperate. It took all of his concentration. Wet warmth trickled down his side. The old wound was breaking open. He stumbled suddenly, not seeing the dead man at his feet until he was lying on his back atop his fruitcase on the stone floor. Belial raised his blade of black fire, snarling. "Take it. Take Callandor and defend yourself. Take it, or I will kill you now. If you will not take it, I will slay you." "No!" Even Belial gave a start at the command in that woman's voice. The Forsaken stepped back out of the arc of Rand's sword and turned his head to frown at Moiraine as she came striding through the battle, her eyes fixed on him, ignoring the screaming deaths around her. "I thought you were neatly out of the way, woman. No matter. You are only an annoyance, a stinging fly. Abide me. I will cage you with the others and teach you to serve the shadow with your puny powers." He finished with a contemptuous laugh and raised his free hand. Moiraine had not stopped or slowed while he spoke. She was no more than 30 paces from him when he moved his hand, and she raised both of hers as well. There was an instant of surprise on the Forsaken's face, and he had time to scream, "No!" Then a bar of white fire, hotter than the sun, shot from the Aes Sedai's hands, a glaring rod that banished all shadows. Before it, Belial became a shape of shimmering motes, specks dancing in the light for less than a heartbeat, flecks consumed before his cry faded. There was silence in the chamber as that bar of light vanished. Silence except for the moans of the wounded. The fighting had stopped dead, veiled men and men in breastplates alike standing as if stunned. "He was right concerning one thing," Moiraine said, as coolly serene as if she were standing in a meadow. "You must take Callandor. He meant to slay you for it, but it is your birthright. Better by far that you knew more before your hand held that hilt, yet you have come to the point now, and there is no further time for learning. Take it, Rand. Whips of black lightning curled around her. She screamed as they lifted her, hurled her to slide along the floor like a sack until she came up against one of the columns. Rand stared up at where the lightning had come from. There was a deeper shadow up there, near the top of the columns, a blackness that made all other shadows look like noonday, and from it, 2 eyes of fire stared back at him. Slowly the shadow descended, resolving into Baal-Zamon, clothed in dead black, like a Midral's black. Yet even that was not so dark as the shadow that clung to him. He hung in the air, 2 spans above the floor, glaring at Rand with a rage as fierce as his eyes. Twice in this life I have offered you the chance to serve me living. Flames leaped in his mouth as he spoke, and every word roared like a furnace. Twice you have refused, and wounded me. Now you will serve the Lord of the Grave in death. Die, Luz Therin Kinslayer. Die, Rand Althor. It is time for you to die. I take your soul. As Baal-Zamon put forth his hand, Rand pushed himself up, threw himself desperately toward Callandor, still glittering and flashing in midair. He did not know whether he could reach it or touch it if he did, but he was sure it was his only chance. Baal-Zamon's blows struck him as he leapt, struck inside him, a ripping and crumpling, tearing something loose, trying to pull a part of him away. Rand screamed. Bah! He felt as if he were collapsing like an empty sack, as if he were being turned inside out. The pain in his side, the wound taken at Falmer, was almost welcome, something to hang on to, a reminder of life. His hand closed convulsively on Callandor's hilt. The one power surged through him, a torrent greater than he could believe, from Sedene into the sword. The crystal blade shone brighter than even Moiraine's fire had. It was impossible to look at, impossible any longer to see that it was a sword, only that light blazed in his fist. He fought the flow, wrestled with the implacable tide that threatened to carry him, all that was really him, into the sword with it. For a heartbeat that took centuries he hung, wavering, balanced on the brink of being scoured away like sand before a flash flood. With infinite slowness the balance firmed. It was still as though he stood barefoot on a razor's edge above a bottomless drop, yet something told him this was the best that could be expected. To channel this much of the power, he must dance on that sharpness as he had danced the forms of the sword. He turned to face Baal-Zamon. The tearing within him had ceased as soon as his hand touched Callandor. Only an instant had passed, yet it seemed to have lasted forever. "You will not take my soul," he shouted. "This time, I mean to finish it once and for all. I mean to finish it now!" Baal-Zamon fled, man and shadow vanishing. For a moment, Rand stared, frowning. There had been a sense of folding as Baal-Zamon left. Twisting, as if Baal-Zamon had in some way bent what was. Ignoring the men staring at him, ignoring Moiraine crumpled at the column base, Rand reached out through Callandor and twisted reality to make a door to somewhere else. He did not know to where, except that it was where Baal-Zamon had gone. "I am the hunter now," he said, and stepped through. The stone shook under Egwene's feet. The stone shook, it rang. She caught her balance and stopped, listening. There was no more sound, no other tremor. Whatever had happened, it was over. She hurried on. A door of iron bars stood in her way, with a lock as big as her head. She channeled Urz before she reached it, and when she pushed against the bars, the lock tore in half. She walked quickly across the chamber beyond it, trying not to look at the things hanging on the walls. Whips and iron pincers were the most innocuous. With a small shudder, she pushed open a smaller iron gate and entered a corridor lined with rough wooden doors, rush torches burning at intervals in iron brackets. She felt almost as much relief at leaving those things behind as she did at finding what she sought. The witch cell. The wooden doors opened easily. Some were unlocked, and the locks on the others lasted no longer than that larger lock had earlier. But every cell was empty. Of course, no one would dream themselves in this place. Any prisoner who managed to reach Telaran Riod would dream of a pleasanter place. For a moment, she felt something close to despair. She had wanted to believe that finding the right cell would make a difference. Even finding it could be impossible, though. This first corridor stretched on, and others joined it. Suddenly, she saw something flicker just ahead of her, a shape even less substantial than Joyabaya had been. It had been a woman, though. She was sure of that. A woman seated on a bench beside one of the cell doors. The image flickered into being again, and was gone. There was no mistaking that slender neck and the pale, innocent-appearing face with its eyelids fluttering on the edge of sleep. Amiko Nagoyen was drifting towards sleep, dreaming of her guard duties, and apparently toying drowsily with one of the stolen terrain grau. Egwene could understand that. It had been a great effort to stop using the one Vereen had given her, even for a few days. She knew it was possible to cut a woman off from the true source even if she had already embraced Saidar, but severing a weave already established had to be much harder than damming the flow before it began. She set the patterns of the weaving, readied them, making the threads of spirit much stronger, this time thicker and heavier, a denser weave with a cutting edge like a knife. The wavering shape of the dark friend appeared again, and Egwene struck out with the flows of air and spirit. For an instant, something seemed to resist the weaving of spirit, and she forced it with all of her might. It slid into place. Amiko Nagoyen screamed. It was a thin sound, barely heard, as faint as she herself was, and she seemed almost like a shadow of what Joya Beer had been. Yet the bonds woven of air held her. She did not vanish again. Terror twisted the dark friend's lovely face. She seemed to be babbling, but her shouts were whispers too soft for Egwene to understand. Tying and setting the weaves around the Black Sister, Egwene turned her attentions to the cell door. Impatiently, she let earth flood into the iron lock. It fell away in black dust, in a mist that dissolved completely before it struck the floor. She swung open the door and was not surprised to find the cell empty except for one burning rush torch. But Amiko is bound and the door is open. For a moment, she thought of what to do next. Then she stepped out of the dream. Ngo, 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 and woke to all her bruises and aches and thirst, to the wall of the cell against her back, staring at the tightly shut cell door. Of course, what happens to living things there is real when they wake. What I did to stone or iron or wood has no effect in the waking world. Nynaeve and Elaine were still kneeling beside her. Whoever is out there, Nynaeve said, screamed a few moments ago, but nothing else has happened. Did you find a way out? We should be able to walk out, Egwene said. Help me to my feet, and I will get rid of the lock. Amiko will not trouble us. That scream was her. Elaine shook her head. I have been trying to embrace Saidar ever since you left. It is different now, but I am still cut off. Egwene formed the emptiness inside her, became the rosebud opening to Saidar. The invisible wall was still there. It shimmered now. There were moments when she almost thought she could feel the true source beginning to fill her with the power. Almost. The shield wavered in and out of existence too fast for her to detect. It might as well have still been solid. She stared at the other two women. I bound her. I shielded her. She is a living thing, not lifeless iron. She must be shielded still. Something has happened to the shield set on us, Elaine said, but Amiko is still managing to hold it. Egwene let her head sag back against the wall. I will have to try again. Are you strong enough? Elaine grimaced. To be blunt, you sound even weaker than you did before. This try took something out of you, Egwene. I am strong enough there. She did feel more weary, less strong, but it was their only chance that she could see. She said as much, and their faces said they agreed with her, however reluctantly. Can you go to sleep again so soon? Nynaeve asked finally. Sing to me. Egwene managed to smile. Like when I was a little girl. Please? Holding Nynaeve's hand with one of hers, the stone ring clasped in the other, she closed her eyes and tried to find sleep in the wordless humming tune. The wide door of iron bars stood open, and the room beyond seemed empty of life, but Mat entered cautiously. Sandar was still out in the hall, trying to peer both ways at once, certain that a High Lord, or maybe 100 defenders or so, would appear at any moment. There were no men in the room now, and by the looks of the half-eaten meals on a long table they had left hurriedly, no doubt because of the fighting above. And from the looks of the things on the walls, he was just as glad he did not have to meet any of them. Whips in different sizes and lengths, different thicknesses with different numbers of tails. Pincers and tongs and clamps and irons. Things that looked like metal boots and gauntlets and helmets, with great screws all over them as if to tighten them down. Things he could not even begin to guess the use of. If he had met the men who used these things, he thought he would surely have checked that they were dead before he walked away. "Sandar," he hissed. "Are you gonna stay out there all bloody night?" He hurried to the inner door, barred like the outer, but smaller, without waiting for an answer, and went through.